A common question that comes up for health professionals is, are you allowed to leverage your skills and knowledge as a health professional to create a non-clinical business to supplement your private practice income, such as running workshops for parents or extramural groups for kids? The short answer is yes, and you absolutely should consider diversifying your revenue streams. But there are important ethical and time considerations to be cognizant of. In this episode, I chat with Anandé Ferreira, who is an occupational therapist in private practice, but she's also the founder of PlayMore, a subscription-based online platform teaching caregivers practical tips and strategies on various play and child development topics. Anandé provided some great insights into how you can provide or create an alternate revenue stream leveraging technology. Before we get into it, don't forget to like, subscribe, and hit the bell if you want to be notified of new videos. Welcome to Anandé, who is the founder of PlayMore, which is a fabulous, innovative platform. And of course, I'm biased. You all know I'm biased because I'm an OT. So I think that OTs are the best thing since sliced bread. So sorry to all you physios and OTs, but I think OTs are the best. Just kidding. So anyway, as you guys know, I said I would go live with Anandé to talk about how you can create alternate revenue streams in your practice. And I thought it's quite timely that should come up because I've seen quite a few people ask in the allied groups and even in the webinar that InStop had around marketing about whether it's allowed to charge people for things like workshops or where you are in your capacity as an expert, as an OT or physio or speech language therapist or whatever, but you're not actually providing therapy. And so they did clarify that. They said that ethically, as long as it's very clear that you are not providing a therapeutic intervention and that it's generic and that you have the disclaimer that people need to consult with a professional for anything around assessment, diagnosis, or anything like that. So it is allowed. And I think how you've used this is a very innovative way in that it's, in a sense, it's a form of health promotion.
Yeah.
So welcome and thank you so much for joining me at 8 o'clock at night.
Thank you so much for having me. I'm very excited to be here, and I think it's so important that even as health professionals, I think we sometimes can be so narrow with our I think almost the use of our skills and our knowledge. And I think, just sometimes thinking out the box, which I think with play, it's, all the ways we can use a box in different ways. And it's the same with this. I think it's sometimes about just taking that step back and actually thinking about other ways that we can reach out to so many caregivers or, whatever your client base might be, that could still just benefit so much from your knowledge. Or I always think about, your why, which is very different for all of us and what your passion might be. And I think especially when it comes to play, for me, it wasn't a thing of just specific populations needing more input, but, over time, it just became so clear to me that children of all, backgrounds and socioeconomic status, that play was something that was disappearing, and that it was important for all of us to kind of have this conversation around play. And I think something like a platform, or what I've noticed a lot in lockdown now, is a lot of webinars that have started coming out more and more, which is about more of the general population and kind of giving them some more input and guidance in that way. So I think this is an exciting topic, and I hope that others that are listening, can really kind of reflect and think of other ways that they can use their knowledge and things that they're passionate about in different ways.
But speaking about taking a step back, let us take a step back and you properly introduce yourself and tell everybody who you are and a little bit your bio, your background.
Perfect. So I am an OT based in private practice since 2013, and I have a special interest in pediatrics, but more specifically in sensory integration and playfulness, which was my master's study. And that's really where I got the opportunity to really dive into play. And then I'm also a guest lecturer for the University of Cape Town, specifically on the topic of play and playfulness and play assessments and play intervention for the second and fourth years, where we introduce those topics. And then in 2018, I took a lot of what I was doing at the university and realized that a lot of colleagues were asking me about these play assessments. And depending on when people graduated, that they actually didn't get a lot of information and content on play assessments, what they mean once you've done it, and then how to actually plan interventions around it. So I then took a lot of what I was working on and started workshops and CPD workshops for OT colleagues, so those who've graduated in 2018. Unfortunately, this year, don't think we'll have any workshops, but we'll continue that in 2021. And yes, then I started the online platform in 2019. So before all of this online excitement, but it really was just that I was experiencing even then that, we're all so busy, and I was doing a lot of talks at schools and had a lot of parents say, "Oh, I wish I was there for that. I wish, can you do it again, or can you share some information around it?" And I thought, well, why not put it online where caregivers can access the talk essentially in their own time, in their own schedules, just because then you do one early in the morning, and then some people can make it, and then evenings not everyone can make it. So I think that way I just felt like more caregivers could access the information, but do it in a way that really just suits their lifestyles.
Yeah. No, that's fantastic. It is all about accessibility, which is becoming really apparent now that everyone's been forced to explore, like telehealth, for example.
Yes.
And before we get into the difference between clinical therapy and what you are actually doing, I think maybe let me just try and see if I can bring up your website so that we can show everybody. So it's PlayMore. What is your website?
PlayMoreOT.com.
.com. Okay, I'm going to see if I can actually bring it up, because I think it will be a nice thing to give everybody kind of an idea of what we're talking about as you explain,
Yeah.
Okay, so let me just share the screen here. And there we go. Okay, so I'm going to bring this. Okay, it is up in the screen now.
Okay.
So this is your website, right? So we can see there you've got the PlayMore coaching introduction. I'm going to see if we can actually play it.
Don't know if you're getting any sound, Tasneem, with the video.
Those of you who are watching on Facebook, can you actually hear the video? Okay, so I'm not sure if anybody could hear the video. I could hear it through my earphones.
For your side.
But I'm not going to play the whole video. I just wanted to give everyone an idea of what your website is about. So you've got your online play coaching, talks and workshops, and then you have there the link to, you obviously do have a therapeutic practice as well. Okay, so that takes us then into the next section, which is then what is the difference between when you are, in the section of your services offering assessment and clinical therapy, and what you actually provide through the subscription service of PlayMore.
And I really, when anyone asks, I think about PlayMore as social online learning. So it really is about educating and empowering caregivers. It's not an individual, I don't sit with a caregiver and give them individual input in terms of their child, and we don't go through, that whole process. It really just is like any talk that you would do at a school, or like these webinars that people are running. The platform is essentially made up of different talks on different topics. So got a screen time talk that goes through, for example, why we have the screen time guidelines, strategies to kind of help with transitioning in screen time, and then it talks on play development for the different ages, what play spaces, what do we mean by that, play prompts, and so on. So it really is essentially a talk on a general topic with, I think this is important for me, it's evidence-based and it's updated, because I think the moment any of us Google, if you Google anything, I mean, that grease at the bottom where you can keep clicking through, endless pages of information. And I just think there's so much information out there, but it's not all evidence-based and it's not all actually updated. So I think a lot of caregivers, it's just so much noise out there, and it's about, for them to tease out, someone refers to this study, but was it actually a peer-reviewed study? Was it something that was, the way it was done? And, we're not expecting caregivers to be able to, read through the whole, how the study was done. I think a lot of people tend to skip to the conclusion, where I think as health professionals, we should analyze more about the content and how studies were done and how reliable and valid, and how can we generalize the information. And I think that's what's so important for me, is that it's lucky I love play and I love reading about play. So I think that's why it was a natural fit for me, because it was something I was already doing a lot in my own free time. But to have that information, to make sense of it, and then to give it to, a audience, whatever your audience might be, that's depending on your client base, in a way that's understandable, not jargony, but there to just educate them. And I think that's the difference, is that the platform is an education platform. It's not going to, anyone who watches it's not going to solve, especially developmental problems in any way. And what I always say in the talks is that, a lot of the information is based on the general population, on kind of what are normal, typical developmental patterns and things. It's not going to explain necessarily why your child might not be able to do things. But what we're bringing up in those talks is red flags, what to look out for, and then that you should seek out, a health professional, whether, a speech therapist, OT, physio, dietitian, just depending on kind of the topic that we're talking about at that time. So I think that's the big difference, making caregivers aware of things, but it won't solve that why, my child is necessarily struggling with something. But I think it empowers them enough to be able to then take that next step and say, wow, my child is struggling with this. Let me go get that next step and actually go to the required health professional in that way. So I think that's a big difference. It's exactly like all these webinars, everything, but it's on one platform that a caregiver can access, whenever they have their time. And again, I have quite a range of topics on the platform, and I have some people who come for 1 month because they want to listen to one specific masterclass, as I call them, and they cancel at any time. So it's also, I have a few people who've been there since October last year, and then some who come and go. And I think that's exactly it. It's about a caregiver accessing the information that they need on a topic that's relevant to them. And that's one thing I always say on the platform. It's again very important that I think we all know that you should speak to your field. I think that, to me, it's very important that we are, whatever I'm discussing on the platform are things that I feel, is relevant to my practice. It's things that I've, more my focus. And whenever there's a question, because obviously even like this, in some of the groups I get questions, and it's about then referring them to the relevant sources or individuals that could give them that specific answer. So that really, to me, is quite important, is that it's there to set them on that path, but it's not necessarily, it's in no ways can it ever replace therapy for a child who needs therapy.
So I think you kind of did start touching on the next question, which was, what are some of the ethical and legal considerations you had to be cognizant of when creating a platform like this? So one of the things you mentioned was staying within scope of your knowledge and skills and expertise. What are some of the other things that you made sure you looked into and that you would advise others to be aware of?
Okay, I think again that evidence-based practice, I don't know if it's a UCT thing. Thank you to Helen Buchanan. But I think it's very important that if you are, you deciding, I think again, whether it's online or whether it's at a school, at a practice, or wherever you are, any talk that you are doing, I think you need to read up on it, and I think you need to be aware of, the new things, other questions other people might have from previous, research studies that some people are holding on to, in order to say, okay, well, this is the newer things that have come out since then. And one thing that I'm quite passionate about in terms of us knowing that, other people are doing research, but then to also acknowledge other people in the talks. I think, I don't know if for some reason on podcasts, especially, I've heard a lot of people talk as if it was their knowledge. And I think it's so important that even if you're doing an online talk, I will say that, this concept is from Anita Bundy, or this concept is, to still refer to those things, even if I give handouts as part of so I'll have my little video and then there's a PDF download. But I still think that, for us to make others aware that it's not all your own ideas, but to reference those who have contributed to the knowledge that you're sharing in that talk. And then, of course, we all have our own, you kind of pull things together, and, from practice, you might have your own theories or your own little things that you've started working on, and then to copyright those things as well. I think it's, I know that one or two other people have had difficulties with their ideas being taken and then presented on other platforms. So I think it's your own knowledge, but also then sharing of other people's knowledge, and it's just kind of finding the balance with how you do that on an online video, just like you would almost if you were writing an article, is what I often give advice on.
So I think just before I carry on, if anybody has any questions, please just type it in the comments and then I will bring it up. So what I wanted to touch on next is kind of a bit about what you were speaking now, but also around actually creating a platform like this. So something I've noticed when telehealth first, people started to entertain the idea of doing telehealth, is that, people don't really take change well. Not everybody takes change well. And this is quite scary for a lot of people. And now here you're talking about doing something that's even like not traditional therapy, and you're using technology. So a lot of people are very cautious around that. So what for you made you take the plunge to actually do something that's so different?
So it's actually so funny because I'm not an early adapter at all. Something like SnapScan, I promise you, my friends could not handle. I didn't download SnapScan for ages after it came out. Eventually, I had to pay somewhere with only SnapScan. So I think that's what's so funny, is that everyone's like, but you don't seem like the tech savvy person. And I think for me, my passion was just such a big drive as part of it, is that I wanted to share more around play. And I think for me, the heart saw of so many kids, that you engage with in practice saying, they wish they had time to play more or things like that. Something in me just couldn't leave that anymore. So I think if you're passionate about something, you will put your head down and do it. And I will admit there has been a lot of scary firsts. I've kept my very first live video that I did. It's still on the platform, and I often go and I look at it and I have a big giggle because I had no facial expressions. I was like a robot doing that first video. So I think it's also good to reflect back, and it's never going to be perfect the first time. I think we often compare ourselves to videos of people who've maybe been doing, I know I did that, of people who've been doing it for a long time. And the only way you actually get better at it is by, practicing. And yes, it's hard because your first practice is something you have to post online for so many people to see. And I think for me, it was breaking that down and saying, you know what, it's not perfect, but here we go. You kind of just have to work through those first. And I think Brene Brown had a wonderful podcast this year on first times. And it is, it's not just one time that's scary, it's a few times, and then eventually it does become easier. It's certainly, I felt the same with telehealth. I mean, my first, I was so nervous, and there was a little person that I adore, and I still don't know why I was so nervous for that first telehealth session. And I think it's the same with the platform. I mean, we recently, I think in June, I moved from, I was using Facebook as well, and I moved onto a separate platform because I had some people who didn't have Facebook accounts, and it just became a bit to have two separate ways. So even that move from what was known to me onto this new platform in June was still something I had to adjust to, and would definitely, anxiety would come and go. And I think that's just what I want to normalize for anyone who wants to try something new, is that I think we look at other people and they make it seem easy. But I can tell you, even for me, it was a lot of scary first times, but it's so worth it once you just kind of allow yourself to be okay with that it's scary, and that it's, you're just going to try and see what happens, and not put, too much pressure on yourself. By, watching, I know when I watched that first video, I thought, oh my word, how am I going to do this again next month? And then you just do. So yes, no, it's definitely something that does get easier. And I think now, I looked at my video from last month, and it's amazing how it's just having some exposure to it. And I had one person who, even, before going live, even if you just record videos at home and you kind of get used to it that way, I think there's different ways to do it, and it doesn't always have to be a live webinar. If you want to record it and then post it or something like that, to get, or
I can attest to that about, the video. I know lots of people are scared about video. So currently, because of lockdown, our school can't have the open day, and I work at a school that offers the technical occupational curriculum. So normally we show kids around the skill centers. And I tell you, the men teachers are like more divas than the ladies. Because I'm now currently taking videos of we're trying to make a virtual open day.
Oh, wow.
And I say to the guys, listen, if you get like 20, 30 parents coming and standing in front of you, and you talk to them about what you do in your center, it's just me with my phone, and you want to now feel shy and but I understand, because people feel self-conscious about being on camera, because there's this permanence to it. Whereas people in front of you, they leave and it's in their memory, but this permanent thing of you being on camera. And I would actually encourage people to go to look for like YouTube influencers, and then go back in there to their first videos.
Absolutely.
And you'll see that the difference between their first video, when they had no followers or subscribers, to when they have hundreds of thousands of subscribers, And you'll see that it was just through doing it regularly and getting better and not being afraid to put yourself out there. That actually, that's how you actually end up growing. Else you'll never do anything. I mean, nobody here who is in their profession was 100% confident the first time they had to make a splint or transfer a patient from a wheelchair to a bed or any of those things.
Absolutely.
But you had to just do it and not be afraid to make a fool of yourself in order to progress. Yeah.
And I think it's exactly what you're saying now. I think that fear, I know for me, it was almost the fear of the internet trolls about people leaving comments and like strange things. And I think that's what often it's that fear of putting ourselves out there. Like you said, that permanent, you know, it's something that's out there, which, like I said to someone other, you can delete it. If it gets too much, you can always hit that delete button. But it's amazing once you just get used to, I know for me initially, even just doing posts on my Instagram or something, because I hardly posted on my personal account. So that was something to initially get used to. And then I started posting videos, and initially that felt very weird. And then that also became normal. And I think that's just, it's exactly like I said, just practicing and finding what, I think, like I said, if you're passionate about something, it's so much easier. And I think then you speak with so much more enthusiasm and love, and I think there's not a lot of you kind of wanting to think through everything. It just comes from the heart, which often makes it so much easier.
Yeah. So you spoke about how you came up with this idea and why it became a passion of yours, and you now kind of touched on how in the beginning you went really low tech and used a Facebook group. I'm assuming it was a closed Facebook. But now you've kind of migrated to a website-based platform. So talk to me a little about how you made the decisions around like how you're going to deliver this idea that, and secondly, how you decided on your business model.
Yeah, so initially, I think the social media platforms, because it is a social, I always wanted people to feel like it's not, you're not going to sit in a lecture, like for caregivers especially, I never wanted it to feel too formal. So the social platforms made sense to me, especially Facebook, because it had the closed group option. And then initially I did a lot more lives, which interestingly now that everyone is working from home, and I think a lot of caregivers have had quite a lot on their plate at the same time, trying to, manage the household and e-learning and jobs. So I've actually now started recording and posting and actually moving away from lives, just because that became a bit tricky for caregivers. So initially I recorded a lot. So the first kind of, I would say, model of the platform was a monthly masterclass, which was an in-depth, it's a longer, about an hour kind of video on a specific topic. And then I had weekly demonstrations, which were shorter videos ranging from about 10 minutes to 15, 20 minutes. So I built on the library initially a lot, because obviously going in, it was the first month, that was the first video, there was nothing else. So for 3 to 4 months, I posted a lot of videos nearly every week to kind of build that library at a faster rate. Where now it's a monthly masterclass with Zoom support calls, because what I did find is that I was getting messages from caregivers, like direct messages about questions they had of the videos, and not a lot of people were making use of the comment section and things like that. So I realized that, like you would have at a normal, workshop, or you'd have that live Q&A, I felt like that was missing. So when I moved from, like I said, and the main reason moving from Facebook was just that some people didn't have Facebook accounts. So I was running the Facebook group and a separate link, and it was just getting a bit trying to make sure everyone had the same information all the time. So I thought, let's just get everyone on one platform. And with that, the library, there's so many videos that now it's one monthly masterclass, or one new video a month. And the idea is that, people can go look through whatever videos like I said initially, if they have a specific topic or specific skill that they want to learn more about, they view those videos. What I like about having them there is, like one or two caregivers mentioned, is that they'll try out a few things, but the video is there to go back to if they want to check things, or if they, maybe want to try a different strategy. And then we've got the live Q&A, which really is just a group. Like I said, it's not individual therapy, and that's what I make quite clear to the parents even then, is that it is, it's if you have a question about a video, not necessarily specifically, about your, difficulties that, the child might be experiencing in certain ways, which do come up. And I think, I don't know, for other health professionals who run Instagram accounts, I get a lot of messages in my inbox, even on social media, about, I have a 3-year-old child who's struggling with this, and this. What advice do you have? So I think even besides the platform, I'm sure there must be other health professionals who are still getting this even on social media. So I think it is a way that we even have to obviously respond. So yes, I can hear, it does sound like there's, something that we need to understand more. So I think it's acknowledging always the caregiver in that moment of them reaching out to you with that concern that they have, and helping direct them in the direction where they can find more help, rather than, just ignoring the message, or which I know can be hard when there's so many on top of emails.
But I think that it's not just on social media. I think any health professional will be able to say that even off of social media, if somebody knows you're an OT, they will ask you something related to a child.
At a dinner party.
Just the other day, my son had like some itchy stuff on his toes, and my husband had read up something about COVID toes in the US, and he was convinced that my son has COVID because he has COVID toes. And so it was the Sunday morning, and I WhatsApped my cousin because he's a doctor. Ask him, can I send him a picture of my son's toes? It's to be expected if you are a health professional.
Exactly. And that's the thing, is I think it's, whether it's at a dinner party or WhatsApp or on your messages, you're going to get that. And I think it is just that about acknowledging and hearing, and then helping them, find, whether it is the COVID toes, and clearing that out quickly, because I'm sure that, or, if it's just about sending them a link with, these are therapists in your area, and luckily a lot of the professional bodies' websites are very helpful in that way. So I think it's exactly like that does happen on some of the Zoom sessions as well, but it's just about managing and helping them then find access to physio, OT, or whoever they might need if it's more specific needs. Because it's been interesting. Sometimes I think it's the bridge that they want, is that they they've noticed things at home, and they see the masterclass topic come up. And I think it would be true for any webinar that someone runs, is that the people are often drawn to things because they've seen, or that, unconsciously they might be worried about it, or there's something that's niggly, in them, and they want to hear more about the topic. And then once they hear, they go, oh my word, yes, this resonates so much with me. So I think, you'd have that wherever, but it's just about the distinction of general principles versus that individualized therapy goals and plans.
Before we move on to the next question, just because this kind of relates as well to the previous question around legal and ethical considerations. So in the InStop marketing webinar, that also was one of the questions that came up around, can you manage a Facebook group of, say, parents, for example, and you are the admin? And like they said, so what Hanika Jonas from Insta, she said that it's not technically not allowed, but you have to be just cautious. So they wouldn't advise it. So what I would say is, in this situation, you need to just be very clear about your boundaries. And I would even say have some set template responses to when somebody asks you advice. I mean, obviously you're going to tweak it a little to personalize to the person, but you know, have a few set responses that you know you're always going to respond in this way. And the second thing they brought up was around, you know, with even off social media, one of the ethical guidelines is around touting and canvassing, where you mustn't like make somebody feel like they need therapy. And I think one of the recommendations that came up, so say for example, if you're asked to do screening or anything like that, if you provide the person with an option of, besides you, these are other health professionals you can contact, then it is not you canvassing to come to yourself. It's not like you're just trying to get business. You are actually just providing valuable information that the person can make informed choices, and they don't have to come to you. It's about the profession and not about you.
Exactly.
So I think if people use that as a kind of a guide and just be very clear on their boundaries, then you should be okay.
Absolutely, because I think that's probably the difference is when you're doing these things at, especially for example, I'm a school-based therapist, so if I was doing the talk at the school where I'm based, you know, they're a lot closer to me. Where if you may be running a workshop and people are coming from that area, but when you go online, you know, I've got people from different, you know, someone in Durban, someone in, and that's what's been so nice. And I think also just knowing where to send them to, and you know, knowing which professional bodies like this, so you see, you know, link with all the things, making sure you know what's working, what isn't, and that's something, for example, that's being updated at this stage. So I had to make parents aware and say, you know, this is the link, but it's not working at present, but it's being updated, so check back, so that they also don't kind of, you know, lose hope or lose direction in a way. So yes, no, exactly.
So the next question I wanted to ask is following on around, so you've chosen to use a subscription-based business model, and people can cancel at any time. Now, when you start a private practice, you don't have the problem that most outside of health entrepreneurs have of deciding how they're going to value the service or product and price it, because we kind of have to more or less follow the guidelines of the medical aids and all that. So we kind of have a yardstick, right? But now with something like this, you are like a normal entrepreneur that kind of has to
no, exactly.
How did you make that decision? What was that process?
So I looked at what other kind of subscription, especially in terms of it's kind of that education principle, because that's really at the core of it. It's you know, like for example, a moms and I think there were one or two like doula type of, you know, where the moms get together and she goes through certain things. So I just kind of started looking at, you know, what else, what are other people doing? How are they structuring it? You know, what do they include as it? Because it's definitely, it's not a, you know, it's not something that everyone's doing. And then with that, I did, you know, look at for kind of an evening talk, what do, you know, a lot of places kind of charge, because I thought about, you know, it's a 1 monthly new topic. So focusing on that, like, yes, you've got access to everything else. And I always joke that if anyone wants to binge watch all my videos in 1 month, they're welcome to, but I'm not, I always joke and say I don't have that sultry, smooth Morgan Freeman voice. So I think it's going to be a difficult binge watch to get through. But yeah, that's, so a lot of people say, oh, but it's 170 Rand for all the videos. And I go, yes, but for me, it's like my focus was more on, you know, it's a new topic a month, and to almost think about it as a talk a month versus, again, like therapy and everything else. So it's, yes, if you think about the whole library, it might be different. There wasn't a lot of things I could go on in that way, but I decided to kind of look at, you know, what were people doing that were doing one online talk with a group a month, and kind of how they set up their subscriptions. And like I said, there definitely are caregivers who only you know, if there's a particular topic, they'll join for that month and then cancel. And I think that's important, is that, you know, people should be able to join for the information they want and for how long as they need to. And then, yeah, just kind of see where things go from then. And it's been interesting just connecting with a few and then realizing, okay, this might be a nice topic to include next month, especially if you get a lot of questions around one thing. Okay, well, maybe we need to explore this one in a bit more depth. So it wasn't easy, and I definitely looked at kind of what other subscriptions and tried to fit in to see where it was, and decided to go 470 and then kind of always adjust it at a later stage. Yeah, so it wasn't a perfect plan or perfect.
Yeah, well, this is something that this is something I speak a lot about to the private practice growth club members, is that in business nothing is set in stone. It's like you need to take the emotion out of the decisions and look at the data. So if you decide, okay, you're going to set your pricing at that, then you can, based on the data, like how many people are taking that up, or how many, you know, is that maybe too little, or is it too much, or then you can adjust. You can always make adjustments. And I also think, if you need to decide on, it's going to be different for your specific situation. So like you described with your parents, it's like there's different topics, so they might only want specific topics and then get in and get out. But when it's a situation where you need that continuity, so like with a private practice growth academy, for example, if somebody joins and after a month they leave and they didn't have the opportunity to actually start implementing a lot of the stuff, then they're not really going to get value out of it. So what I've done with the academy is that you can join for a 1-month trial period where you can cancel within the 30 days. But if you don't cancel within that 30 days, then you have to stay for a minimum of 6 months in order to at least benefit from the process that I take you through. And so it really depends on your unique target audience and what you are actually trying to achieve and how you are delivering your content.
Absolutely. And yeah, I think that's exactly, like I said, I have some who actually, they say they keep going back to some of the videos. And I think that's again where even I think we always think about different learner styles as children, but we know that even adults, we've got different learning styles. So I think it just needs to fit, again, like you said, to your kind of client base or field, and to see what will work best in terms of the information you're also getting across to them.
So we have 2 more questions. The next question is, what advice would you give to someone who has an idea to create an alternate revenue source that leverages technology? So obviously specifically healthcare professionals.
I think there's 3 things that are quite important that I've learned in this journey since October, although it seems with this whole lockdown period like it's been 3 years since October. But really, like, I think I keep saying the word passion. I think number 1, there will be ups and downs. I think, if I can just on a personal note relate to, even when this lockdown started, I had an uptake in subscriptions initially, with obviously caregivers wanting more information around things because now kids were home more often. And then there were also a sudden cancellations because of financial difficulties that a lot of people were having. I had a lot of preschool teachers who owned their own schools. I mean, we know those little preschools are still not back, and we don't know what their timeline's like. So it's a roller coaster ride full of ups and downs, and I think that you need your passion to carry you through sometimes, especially through the downs, because it's, in a sense, it can be very unpredictable, but to almost just allow that, and I think exactly what you said, taking the emotion out of it, that was something, and I think my husband knows, I'm a very emotional person, and I'm very, and that's harder on some days than it is on other days. I'll admit, there's some days where I think, you get your your sale days, which feel great, and you do happy dances, and then you might have one day with 3 people cancel, and you go, oh my word, what am I doing wrong? But maybe they just they watched the videos they wanted, and now they're quite happy to go. So I think having passion for that, and then secondly persistence, because there will be days where you go, oh, this is just too hard. Because obviously that's, a lot of people use the word side hustle. You've got your main practice or your main focus going, and sometimes to have the energy to, after a day to now, record this video and to sit in front of the camera and to find kind of the enthusiasm for that can be challenging on some days. But I think having that persistence, if it's something that you're really passionate about and you really love, then I think it's easier to persist. But I think what we said earlier as well about first times will always be hard. I love the advice that you gave about going back to, those first influencers videos. Like I said, I laughed at mine where I had no facial expression for the full 40 minutes. It's actually hilarious. But I like watching it because it sometimes just reminds you, even though I feel like I still can learn a lot and grow a lot, when I watch that video, I do feel like, okay, we're taking steps forward. That's good. And then lastly, I think adaptability is so important. I know for PlayMore, I had a very, when I started this monthly subscription idea and everything, I had a very specific end goal in mind. And I think that keeps shifting and changing with what I realize works, what doesn't work, and just being able to adapt to it and not to be so focused on holding on to that idea that you started with that you might lose sight of other opportunities or things that come along. I had a friend who gave me amazing advice when I was so frustrated with, this is my vision for this, doesn't seem to be working, and said, don't be so focused on that you kind of forget to look at the flowers and the beautiful sights along the journey. I think I was doing that initially, where I was so focused on getting to that mountaintop that everything else along the way you kind of lose sight. And the funny thing is, he said you might be aiming for that mountaintop, but it's actually you're going to that one on the other side. I think especially if you're starting a business or anything like that's slightly outside of your comfort zone, is to try and go with the flow when it's needed, because sometimes you trying to push a certain idea or certain method or certain way, there might be a reason if people are giving you feedback of why that's not working, and actually just taking that feedback and saying, okay, what can I do with this, and then just changing it a little bit rather than being very stuck in a specific way, because I think that can sometimes lead to your own demise later on. So I think there is an openness that has to come with it. It's not always easy for any of us, especially if you're starting something with so much passion and love, to sometimes go, oh, I have to go back to the drawing board. But I think having an openness to that is quite important as well.
Yeah. So what would you say, what is your take on actually private practice owners have creating an alternative, whether that be through technology or some other way of doing it? Is that something that has been of benefit to you and something that you advise private practice owners to do?
Absolutely. I think for me, like I said, yes, I enjoyed reading up on play and everything else in my free time anyways. But I think what's been so interesting is that there's certain skills that you definitely develop more without realizing it. And for me, having, reading all of the material and then translating it in a way that was simple, that was clear, with practical strategies. Because, we can read a lot of those research articles and they sound great, but it's, again, very utopian sometimes, and saying, okay, well, how can this work in the kind of real life circumstances for families from different backgrounds and different kind of contexts, and kind of taking that and translating that in that way. So I think for me is that without realizing, I was developing different types of skills along the way. That's been great to actually practice and just also grow in different ways, I guess. From initially kind of, the the assessment and intervention and goal planning that's very individualized. And again, like I think you bring in a lot of the things that you read in the new things into practice as well. So I think in both ways it can really benefit you on a personal and a professional level.
Yeah. So my last question is, what is you spoke a little bit about, having a vision for PlayMore. So it's quite apt that we then end off on that. What is your vision for PlayMore OT?
Yeah, I think it's kind of really in the name. I loved, I think it was in level 4 when we were all in that thinking Cape Town, because the sunrise is later here, we all ended up in the same hour and 20 minutes window period instead of the 3 hours. But it was amazing seeing families come out and kids on bicycles and ball play in the streets. I mean, I sometimes felt like I walked onto a movie set. Just with everything going on, and it was just so beautiful to see. And I think it is exactly that for me, is that I just want to continue to bring play back to the foreground. And I know as OT, specifically pediatric OTs, where it's play as a means. I'm not going to say this, so some might laugh, but it's the play we do in sessions. Even I think I know speech therapists, physios, a lot of people use play as a medium, but that's not free play. And for me, it's so important that, we able to understand the difference between free play and structured activity, because there's so many children who are spending so much of their day in structured learning, structured activities, and not enough time for free play with the amazing benefits that it really holds. So my hope is just to continue to advocate for play and to continue to bring it to the foreground, and for people to realize the difference, because I think the moment that happens, there's magic, not only for the child, but for the family as well.
Well, thank you so much for your time. I think I really learned a lot from you, so I hope that everybody else did. I think people have been dropping on and off. Nobody has any questions. So, thank you very much. And
thank you.
And
they're welcome to send me a message if anyone wants to know anything more. Like we're all on social media, so, or even email. If anyone wants to know anything else, they're welcome to let me know.
Yeah, so I mean, I will definitely drop all your links and stuff in the comments. But as I mentioned to you, I will be editing this for YouTube. So those who want to watch it on YouTube, I will also be putting the full description in the description box with all your links. And where can they find you on social media? Because I love your Instagram account. So maybe
Thank you. It's PlayMore OT, and it's like a green little horse, so it should pop out fairly easily. But yeah, it's the same on Facebook and Instagram.
Great. Thank you so much.
Thank you so much, Tasneem. Thanks for having me. I had lots of fun, and thank you for the opportunity to share.